Your movie, my movie, their movie, our movie. Your movie, my movie, their movie, our movie. Your movie, my movie, their movie, our movie. Yeah!
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Your Movie, My Movie with Dan and Steve.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Steve. And the movie that we will be talking about in this episode is 1981's sci-fi, fantasy, horror, animated anthology from Canada, Heavy Metal.
Wow.
Yes. This movie is all of that.
And more.
Yes, for sure. So this show, we're going to be talking about spoilers. So if any of you listeners want to watch that movie before you hear our discussion, this is the time to watch it. But before you get into it, for those who haven't seen it, who would you recommend this movie to?
That's a interesting question. I didn't write it down, but I mean, let's see. I would recommend it to horny teenagers, horny preteens, and I don't know, people who are into animation and anything 80s, 90s rock, because this has everything that they would want. It's like a 80s child's wet dream.
Yes, that's a great way. That's a great way of putting it. So who I would recommend it to is, let's see, 40-something, white, male, geeks who watch hentai.
Yes.
Now, I am definitely four of those, and I will neither confirm nor deny one of those.
Oh, dear.
Okay. Okay.
Fair enough. It is your type.
Do you think that's a good?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
This movie has a lot of everything in it.
Yes.
This movie's a lot.
Yes, it is. Now, you've never seen this before.
I've never seen this before. I've heard about it before, and I've heard of Heavy Metal Magazine. I'm into the art of Mobius, I believe is his name. I know he's like a French artist, and they had their French magazine that was kind of like a sci-fi, cyberpunk type thing. And that seems super cool. I like his art style. I don't think, did he have a hand in this movie at all, other than his influence?
No, I think it was just the influence. The art style. They tried to imitate his art style for some of the segments. Definitely for the Harry Canyon one and for the Tarna one. Yeah, those were heavily influenced by Mobius. So
yeah,
I mean, I don't know if we want to get into it now, but like the Harry Canyon one, you can see there's a lot of inspiration, taken from that for The Fifth Element. Have you seen that movie?
I've only watched like the first 20 minutes. Maybe.
Okay.
I had to leave before I finished it. But It looked interesting. Yeah. I mean, I could totally see that for sure.
Yeah.
This movie looks like it's influenced a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, it's influenced a lot of things, but it's also taken influence from a lot of things too. So you're not sure whether it's, taking or receiving, basically.
Yeah, I guess then it's probably an influential movie in the fact that it's amalgamized so much of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
I thought it was really interesting. I wasn't expecting an anthology when I first sat down to it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so that was interesting. Unexpected. Yeah. Interesting. So how should we approach starting to talk about this entire movie?
Well, I mean, we can go. I don't think we have to go into details about the plot, but we can just like talk about kind of what happens in each segment.
Okay.
And kind of talk about, analyze each segment if you'd like.
Okay.
So the way the movie starts is that it's space and there's a narrator.
Yes.
And
Super cool voice.
Yes. And he's talking about the evil of the Lochnar.
Yes.
And
a shadow will fall over the universe and evil will follow.
Exactly. And then the Lochnar kind of becomes the object that connects all of the segments. And if it wasn't for the Lochnar, like, you know, this would just be like a bunch of random sci-fi fantasy horror shorts.
Yes.
So, you know, they have this one thing to hang all of those other things on.
Yes. So some of them I was missing the connection though.
Yeah. But it's just an excuse. It's just an excuse. Yeah. Well, you know what? Before we go into the segments, let's kind of talk about. Do you want to talk about like the people involved?
Yes, I would love to talk about the history of it.
Okay. Well, this was produced. I know this was produced in the 70s, and then it was released in 1981. And this was produced by Ivan Reitman.
Okay.
And he's the director of Meatballs and Ghostbusters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Meatballs, that's a pretty raunchy movie. Not super raunchy, but it does have raunch in it. And he was also the director of Ghostbusters, and that also explains the cast.
Yes, it does.
You know, this cast has Eugene Levy, John Candy, Harold Ramis, and a bunch of other people in that orbit. And like, I don't know much details, but like, you know, some of those casts, they were together in Saturday Night Live, but also Second City, which is like the Chicago version of Saturday Night Live.
Improv group.
Yeah.
Hardcore.
Yeah. Also like the National Lampoon radio show as well.
I didn't know that was a thing. That sounds cool.
That's a thing. But yeah, so like there's a lot of comedy people in the cast for this, which one would not expect. And also, let me see, I wrote down his name because I never paid attention to this before. But the composer of the score is Elmer Bernstein, and he conducted the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra for the instrumental music. And apparently he was the composer for The Ten Commandments, Magnificent Seven, Animal House, Meatballs, and Ghostbusters.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, when I saw that name, I was like, wow, I think that's a heavy hitter if in the composer world.
Well, I mean, just the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra.
Yeah.
Just that alone. And then you read what his credits are. And so, I mean, if nothing else, this movie is great for its music and sound.
Yes.
And soundtrack.
That is impressive about this movie. It's everything in the oral atmosphere of this movie is pretty incredible.
Right.
Even like the sound effects are really, you know, visceral and impressive. I don't know.
So yeah, and then the movie starts with that voiceover narration with shots of space, and then you get like an image of a space shuttle, and it's like, I'm not sure how they did it because it doesn't look like photo realistic. It looks like they took like a photo of a drawing of a space shuttle, and then out of it comes a Cadillac.
Yes.
With an astronaut in a spacesuit riding it.
Yes.
And then he falls into orbit on Earth and then drives off.
Is that where freaking Elon Musk got his like send a car into space or something?
No, but it's well, I don't think so. Maybe, but back in the 80s, well, I don't know which came first. This might have come first, actually, because back in the 80s, MTV was a cable channel. And so they used like a spaceman, similar imagery.
I see.
To try to get people to subscribe to MTV.
Oh.
So I don't know if if heavy metal inspired MTV to do that or not, or if it was just, you know, synchronicity, you know, happenstance.
Interesting. That's crazy. Yeah. But it's such like, you're right. It's almost like they took a picture and drew over it, or like vice versa.
Right.
It's so interesting. And like the Cadillac also looked just as photoreal in certain ways. And even the movement of the astronaut was really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not photoreal because it doesn't look like it's a real person,
yes,
but
like
a picture.
Yes.
A photo was taken of a picture.
It didn't look like just hand-drawn animation.
Yeah, exactly. And a rock song is playing, and lots of rock songs play.
Plenty of rock songs.
Yeah, I think it was... I didn't write down the song.
What was it? It was Radar Rider.
Yeah, Radar Rider. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the astronaut drives off, and he comes to this house in the middle of nowhere.
Yes. It looks like Andrew Wyeth painting.
Okay.
Like it looks like freaking
American Gothic?
Yeah, American Gothic, or what's Days of Heaven?
Okay,
Terrence Malick.
yeah.
Like it's just like a farmhouse on a hill.
Yeah.
It's very spooky,
surrounded
almost
by wheat fields.
Yes.
That he drove through in his space Cadillac.
Mm-hmm. Very Americana.
Yeah, for sure. It's well, that's another funny thing too, because this movie is very American.
Yes,
but it was made by Canadians.
That's so funny. That's hilarious. It is so American. Like even the first short story or whatever, it takes place hardcore in New York.
Yeah. So then the astronaut, I believe his name is Grimaldi, because that's the name of the prologue.
Okay, the title of the prologue.
Yeah. And so he comes in and he has a case, and then his daughter, comes down the stairs and she's like, "Did you get me anything?" And he said, "I sure did." And he has this case and he opens it up, and it's this green glowing sphere that immediately like melts him,
liquidates him.
Yes,
immediately.
Yes. And then she stares at it in horror, and like she doesn't say anything else throughout the entire movie. That's her only lines.
Oh my gosh, really? Wow, yeah. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
She does some great facial acting.
Yeah, the animation for her is great, and it's really the shadows.
The shadows because they're coming from the orb.
Yeah, exactly. And they're coming low from the orb. So it's a very horror, looking visual.
Yeah, like you're shining a flashlight under your face, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
The briefcase opening reminded me. Have you seen Repo Man?
No.
Actually, a lot of this movie reminded me of Repo Man.
Oh, okay.
Which I'm probably gonna make you watch if you haven't seen it.
That's fine.
Repo Man came out in 1984, and like the same type of deal, like a huge cast of soundtrack people on the soundtrack, very much mix of like sci-fi and sci-fi and other stuff. But yeah, anyways, you got to watch Repo Man.
Okay.
I don't know if they took inspiration from this or what, but there's a lot of crossover, I think.
Okay.
But anyways, the briefcase was hilarious. Then
you're talking about when they open the briefcase and there's a glow, right?
That, and then, Repo Man, the first shot is like, spoilers, the first shot.
Go ahead.
A cop opens a trunk, and there's like it kills him, and all that left are his boots, and they're smoking boots.
Oh,
yeah.
From the Harry Canyon is what you're saying from that one, right?
No, from the dad dying.
Or just from the dad dying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know. Well, when I was thinking that, because in Pulp Fiction, there's a shot where they're opening up a briefcase.
Yes.
You've seen that shot?
I have seen that shot. I haven't seen Pulp Fiction.
But then I remember, no, that's not what it's from. Tarantino's reference is to a 1950s movie, but maybe Repo Man took it from there. So I don't know. But anyway,
it's all interwoven.
Yeah.
Culture.
Yeah. Yes. When you have so many references, you can keep track of who's stealing from whom.
Our old film theory professor Rawlings would say it's the suture, like this like suture that, cultural suture that ties everything together.
Oh, I see.
Anyways, I don't know if that's the right
I never heard him put it that way.
Oh, okay. So. I don't know if it's the right term or not. But Lochnar, right?
Yeah, the Lochnar. So the Lochnar basically hovers in front of this girl and talks about how evil he is, and then relates a story to her.
Yes,
and that's the movie, about how terrible he's been in all these other different places in time. And so that leads us to like the first lengthy segment, Harry Canyon, which is the best euphemism for vagina I've ever heard. Like that, that's like as good as like. There are lots of them in this movie.
Yeah, it's like as good and blatant as like dick hurts.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
His name is Harry Canyon, and he is a butthole, basically.
Let's see. How did I put it? Well, what does he do? What does he do? And where is he from?
He is a taxi driver from New York. Very, very taxi driver-esque. And he's got the accent. He's got the angst.
When in New York?
When in New York? I think it's the 80s, right? Or is it?
Well, it's a future. It's a future New York.
Yes, future New York with flying taxis or floating, hovering taxis.
Yeah.
It's the streets are a mess, and basically it's overwrought with crime, mohawks, and attitude.
Yeah. And apparently, that's really how New York City was during the 70s before, I think, Giuliani. Was it Giuliani who cleaned it up?
I have no idea, but I know that it was that way in the early 80s too.
Yeah, and then it got cleaned up.
It's funny because, can I break in? A lot of my favorite indie movies from like the 80s are set in New York. Like Smithereens, which is a great one. Susan Seidelman, who went on to do, what is that name? Desperately Seeking Susan. Have you seen that one? Anyways, that movie, Smithereens, is an amazing movie. It's like set in New York, and it's like, it just looks like it's been bombed out. It looks like a war zone. Yeah. And then also a lot of early Jim Jarmusch movies, which is one of my favorite directors. He has a lot set in New York that, again, it just looks like a wasteland. It's very interesting how similar they look to this animation.
It's okay.
Don't kill me, please.
No.
I'm sorry.
I don't care. I love cartoons. So yeah, it's very interesting because, there's a shot of Central Park and like there's porn theaters all around it.
Oh, I didn't even notice this was Central Park.
Yeah, because it has that statue. Not Central Park, Rockefeller Center. I am not from New York City. I have never been to New York City. So if you're from New York, please forgive me.
I've never been to New York either. So
yeah. I'm a Florida boy.
We have plenty of New Yorkers down here, though.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah. There was Rockefeller Center where they have the tree and they do the ice skating during the winter. There's like porn theaters all around, and I know like during that time, like there were a lot of porn theaters in New York. And I guess, they thought that contributed a lot to the crime and grime of that time. And then, they kind of shut them down and then tried to gentrify New York City, from what I understand.
Right.
So that was interesting. And, to go back to Harry Canyon and about him as a character, I wrote down that he's fiction's most unconcerned protagonist.
He really is. He's just like... Oh man, that's a great description.
Yeah.
Yes. He does not give a shit.
No.
And he is not the most morally correct person, although he gets out scotch-free from the evil powers of Lochnar.
Well, I mean, when you're in that kind of environment, when you're in a place that bad, you have to have some moral relativism, I suppose.
That's true. Yeah, I guess, yeah. Compared to many, he is an upstanding citizen of that.
Yeah, that he's place. Just trying to get by. That's all he wants to do. Just try to get by in New York. So do you want to get into the plot of that segment?
Sure. So he's driving a cab, and we have like him talking, sort of narrating, setting up the place and time, and a punk gets in, puts a gun to his head, and immediately he has a switch on the floor, and he flips it up with his foot, clicks the red button, and it like vaporizes the guy with a ray of light, almost like a projector beam. Yeah, almost like the Lochnar beam, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Very similar imagery. Like the guy like turns to skeletons and like mush. It's very cool. Yeah. And so he takes the gun, he puts it in the glove box.
Well, that beam, that's just a setup for what happens later. You know, that's all that is.
It's a plot device, basically.
Yeah, but it's set up right then.
Yes.
And then it becomes important twice. Once when he tries to use it but can't, and then once again when he needs to use it at the end. So and I think like even later, like he's going to a meeting, and I think he takes the gun out of the glove compartment.
He does.
So it's a double setup. You know, and in screenwriting, that stuff is important. You don't want things to come out of nowhere. You know, so if you need something, you got to set it up beforehand.
And it's great when it's set up so efficiently. Like, honestly, it really is well done, efficient setup, tight screenwriting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's great because it's like a noir. It's like Taxi Driver. You have like the noir voiceover, the sort of hardened protagonist. It's very cyberpunk neo-noir.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have that guy, he gets vaporized, and the guy's like, dime a dozen vaporized people. I vaporize people all the time in my cab. And then he's driving, and he sees at this like the courthouse type thing. There's it's like some sort of museum.
Yeah, museum. What had happened before is we saw an expedition, I think on Mars or some other planet, and a scientist, they're doing an excavation dig.
Yes.
And they discover the Lochnar buried.
They were looking for it.
Yeah, they were looking for it.
They had bulldozers, and they had a song.
Veteran of the Psychic Wars by Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah, and they had a refrain as the bulldozers were like bulldozing. It was like freaking time we've had a break from it. I don't know, it just felt like very much like industrialization like is destroying places. That's what I felt with the juxtaposition, or not juxtaposition, but the combining of the lyrics with the images of the bulldozers. Okay. Anyways,
that's fair.
Minor observation.
Right.
So they excavated it and sent it to a museum for some reason.
Yeah. And then what happens is the archaeologist who excavated it, he's coming out of the museum when he gets shot by some very ugly gangsters.
Yes. They look kind of like Kingpin or, any sort of gangster mob head boss type character, like any Penguin looking, Al Pacino looking.
Well, he does. He looks very much.
Oh my gosh! Robert De Niro in like The Untouchables.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, like, he resembles the Penguin from the Batman.
Yes, the new Batman movie.
Yeah, played by.
Oh my gosh, Colin
Farrell. And then his makeup was Robert De Niro playing Al Capone in The Untouchables, but with more
pockmarks.
Yeah,
deformities.
Yeah. And that's what the gangster exactly looks like.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the archaeologist gets killed. He comes out of the doors. Then this young girl, apparently her daughter, races out. Ask Harry Canyon for help, and he lets her in. And then we see the gangsters try to go after them, but Harry Canyon, he drives off.
Yes, he says, "This dame got to me."
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that's so great about this movie is the irony between the narration and the dialogue.
Oh my gosh. This is probably my favorite short story. I don't know. Just because it's so... this is the funniest one to me.
Okay.
Because he has so many good one-liners and just... my gosh.
Yeah, and he is a great character.
So yeah, but anyway, so he picks her up. He's like, and also she has massive breasts and a lot of cleavage.
Well, hold on, because we have to make clear, whenever we talk about a woman in this movie, they all have massive breasts.
They all have massive breasts. They're all very sexualized. Except, but there's the only woman that is not sexualized is like the little girl in the side, in the overarching storyline.
Yes. Thankfully,
thank goodness. Oh my gosh. Yeah, like the first image we get of this lady is like her panties are in the shot.
Yeah. What happens is she gets into the back of the cab, but then she passes out. She faints, and so the camera is like at the angle of her ass, basically, and she's wearing like these knee-high boots and like this one piece where it's like a blouse and it shows her cleavage, and like there's like a little flaring skirt.
Yeah, it's like
that only goes up, to mid-thigh at the lowest.
Yeah.
And she has, in panties that go right up her ass. So it's like, yeah, it's going to be that kind of movie.
Yes.
And it gets worse.
It gets worse. But So right, he has her in the car. She passes out. He's like, I'm gonna take her to the police station, see what they can find out, basically.
Yeah.
So he throws her over his shoulder, takes the gun. Does he take the gun out here? No, not yet.
Right. Not yet.
He throws her over his shoulder, starts walking up the police steps. The police building on the outside looks like it looks like a fallout shelter.
Yeah.
It's got like metal doors, graffiti all over the doors, and there's like a camera that addresses the knocker.
Well, it's not a fallout shelter, but it looks more like the headquarters of an army in a war zone.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a bunker.
Yeah, a bunker.
So it's got like a camera that will like basically let people in or not. So he goes in, and what the
sex workers.
I'm sorry. Oh dear. Yes, the sex workers all recognize him and talk to him. He basically, I forget. He's rude to them. Anyways, they make jokes. And then he goes up to the police desk and he's like, I need help. This lady needs help. She passed out and murder. I need to report a murder, right? And he's like, that'll be like 10 grand for an investigation, right? Or like some crazy amount.
Yeah.
So he's got to pay for an investigation. Then what?
He gave them, well, here's $1. Thanks for nothing.
Yeah. So then he like what? Takes her back to his apartment.
Takes her back to his apartment because he's got no place else to go. And then like she's trying to say, hey, I need help. And then she just gives this exposition about, oh yeah, it's the Lochnar and the Venusians are after it. And oh my gosh, I need help. And the entire time he's like getting a beer, making a sandwich, pouring mayo on it, watching TV, picking his teeth.
Yes, taking off his shirt, watching, literally turns on the football game.
Yeah. He's like, oh yeah, that's nice. Oh, okay. He talks like me when I'm talking to somebody.
He does, yes.
Yeah.
And then he's like, beers in the fridge.
Yeah.
Sleep on the couch.
Yeah. And then he goes to bed. And then what happens, Daniel?
And then she comes in while he's getting he's starting to sleep, and she's like, can I sleep with you? And then he's like, sure, if you want. And then she gets naked and they bang it out, man.
well, that's another thing. Like you. Well, I mean, it's they show her get nude.
Yes.
They're showing things off.
Yes.
Especially her 70s bush. she's a redhead and she's got a 70s bush. So.
Oh man, he had some great lines here. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Well, and the song that's playing is Open Arms by Journey.
Oh my goodness. What was his line? Oh my gosh.
It was like, he's all American. Yes.
Nothing like some good old all American, I forget the exact line. I guess I didn't write it down. Oh, right, I did. Nothing can beat good old American know-how.
That's right. And this is a couple minutes after an illegal alien joke.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that joke. There's like an actual green alien guy,
an extraterrestrial.
Yeah, and he's like, well, I left my license in my car or something like that. Yeah. Anyways, that was pretty funny.
It's damn illegal aliens.
Yes. So they have sex. Yeah. They show plenty of her.
Yeah.
And then the next day he says the danger of her turned him on.
Yeah. I think he goes out, doing his cab. No. What happened is he wakes up, she's not in bed,
right? And
then the police come in.
Yes.
And they're like, hey, where's the girl? And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, well, you better, if you know where she is, you better tell us. And if you don't, you're going to be dead. So now the police are involved and are actually wanting to look for her. And then he goes out and he, tries to get cab fares. And that's when one gangster comes in and threatens him. But before he can do the switch on the floor, Rudnick, the penguin-looking gangster, comes in and he's like, "Yeah, I wouldn't do that if I were you."
Right.
And he's like, "Yeah, the girl has something that me and the Venusians want. You know, we bankrolled the excavation, and so we want to purchase the Lochnar from the girl for a fair price. So you need to make it happen," basically, is what he says.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Okay." and then he gets a message to meet with the girl at the Statue of Liberty at a certain time. And so he goes there, and she's like, "Yeah, I made a deal with the gangster, but I'm afraid. So will you come and help me make the exchange?" And he's like, "Okay."
He's basically like, she had a nice face. Yeah. Sorry, different. I'm thinking of a different part of the movie already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they go and they go to the exchange, right? We might be skipping ahead a little bit, but basically, they go to the exchange. It's a bridge, of course. It's always a bridge.
Yeah.
He pulls up. He's in the cab, and she goes and sets down the briefcase with the Lochnar inside. And what is it? What's his name? Rudnick. He sets down the briefcase with the 300 grand.
300,000 chrono bucks, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so she takes it, gets into the cab, and he's wait. He says, "Yeah, I was feeling generous. I'd help her.
Yeah.
I'll take 50%."
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. So then, she hops in. And
Rudnick opens the case with the Lochnar, and so every time, just so you all know, every time somebody picks up and touches the Lochnar, they melt into goo.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Yes. And so Rudnick opens the case with the Lochnar, and he picks it up with his bare hands, and he turns into goo. And it's like,
wow.
If you know anything about the Lochnar, why would you touch it? Why would that? You paid all this money.
It's the power, Stephen.
Oh,
it's the power.
That's right. He has to hold the evil, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. If you're not a true supervillain until you hold pure evil in your hands.
Okay, that's fair.
Haven't you seen Time Bandits?
I only saw it once when I was a kid. So
okay.
Yeah.
Anyways. So yes, he melts.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, back at the taxi, the woman, I forget her name, she is like, "Ha ha ha, that's all well and good. Thanks for your help." Pulls out a little.
Well, no. What happens is Harry Canyons is like, "Hey, we're rich. Why don't we go on a vacation?
Oh yeah,
just the two of us." And it's like, now that he's got his money, he's finally invested.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. And then the girl in the back seat, she's like, "Oh no, it's not gonna work, Harry. It's not gonna work out. I have other plans." And then she pulls out her gun, and then that's when Harry flips the switch and vaporizes her.
What a shame. What a shame.
Yeah.
And then he drives off.
Yeah, he drives off, and then the Lochnar is on the bridge, and then it floats away. And it does narration to scare the little girl. And we get to our next segment.
What's his name? Den?
Den.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is a sort of science nerd kid who's doing a science experiment with lightning. And he's building some sort of contraption. And I forget how he gets the Lochnar.
Well, it always falls like a meteorite.
Oh, right. Yes.
Wherever it goes, it falls like a meteorite. And yet he's doing experiments with natural electricity and lightning. So he takes the Lochnar and he connects it to his contraption for lightning. And so when lightning strikes the contraption with the Lochnar, it teleports him to a place called Neverwhere. And then he transforms...
Where the women never wear clothes.
No. Well, they wear loincloths because, I guess you can't show 70s Bush, constantly in a movie.
Yeah, there wasn't vagina shown.
No.
So I guess they had to censor that, and they also couldn't show a lot of bush. I suppose.
Well, I mean, I guess they had to show good taste at some point.
Good taste. They had like coins over their crotches. Literal. Okay. Anyways. Yes. So the kid, lightning strikes, Lochnar glows up and like shoots him into space. He's like naked falling through space. It's very 2001 Space Odyssey.
And time.
Yes, space and time. My bad. It's awesome. It's like super psychedelic. We got crazy colors. It's like things are blowing up. It's really cool visually. And so he falls and he becomes this huge buff blue guy. He's actually not blue, but in that scene he's blue.
Yeah.
And he's got a huge penis. He makes note of that.
Yeah. Well, so like what's fun? Well, so basically what happens is like it becomes like a Conan the Barbarian pastiche, you know, but it's combined with like a nerdy kid's wish fulfillment to be like super strong and buff, but like put no effort into being so whatsoever.
Yes.
It's that kind of wish fulfillment going on. And like what's so great is character of Den is voiced by John Candy. Now the thing is that, you know, when he's Kid on Earth and when he's narrating, he does the Gee Willikers, you know, kind of voice that he has. You know, a very comedic voice.
High pitched.
Yeah. When you hear it's most just kind of his voice, but like, you know, he puts like a little immaturity into it. Then when he speaks as Den, you know, he sounds like, you know, Conan the Barbarian, you know, John Candy doing his Conan the Barbarian voice. And you know, in this one there's a lot of irony between the narration and in the dialogue. And so what happens?
So he gets his new body.
Okay.
And it basically looks over. And there's like a virgin sacrifice going on type thing where this lady, again, colossal tits, is trying to sacrifice another lady in this like gigantic cosmic pool. And she's like summoning, and she's holding a staff with the Lochnar on. And so the waters are like almost coming up to reach her, right? Or no, they're about to drop the lady in the water. So they drop the lady in the water and Den is like, oh no, let me save her. So he dives in and saves her, and he
just real quick, like they're chanting a name, Ulutek, you know, and that's the name of the god, you know, the evil god that they want to summon. They got that because that's Cthulhu backwards. Yeah, so that's where that comes from.
There was like a lot of Lovecraftian stuff in this influence, and
you know, also all these shorts, they're based off of previous works that were published in heavy metal.
Okay, I was wondering that.
Yeah, and the Lochnar actually comes from the Den story from heavy metal, I believe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. So I mean, it's super interesting. It's a fun ride so far.
Yeah.
So the beautiful lady is drowning. He jumps in. He saves her. He's like, oh man, I can hold my breath forever. So he swims into like this little cavern and goes through a tunnel and comes out in this like beautiful oasis like type thing. And she's like, oh, however will I repay you, basically.
Well, she says a couple of things. Like she says her name, and it's like I think it's like Catherine something or other. Yeah. She speaks with a British accent.
Oh, she does, yes.
Yeah. And she's like, I'm from a place that you probably never heard of, Earth. And he's like, well, I'm from Earth too. And she's like, thank you for saving me. I'll pay you with however you want or willingly. And he goes, the narration goes, yeah, she had such beautiful eyes.
Yes.
And you just see her massive tits and his, you know, pretty face smiling at him.
I barely saw what color her eyes was.
Yes.
Because that's not where what was shown.
That's not where you're supposed to look. Yeah. So, yes. And then they make love.
they make love.
Well, they're about to make love. They make out. They're about to go all the way when the Beastmen come by.
Yes.
And yeah.
And he says, I'd never get a chick like this on Earth.
Yeah.
So then a bunch of like sort of massive, like creepy, like, I mean, not like menacing henchmen type people. Like they're like gorilla type bodies. And they come and they they basically take him back to a palace, right? And they take Catherine as well. And he's greeted there by this like very interesting character named like Ard.
Yes.
Who is very
gay.
Yes. And he's like writhing around on his throne. It's wonderful.
He's very effeminate and he's very coded for gay.
Yes.
Especially like with the effeminate voice that he uses, for sure. Yeah.
But it's so funny the way he like writhes around on the throne. It's hilarious.
Yeah, because he's wearing like only a toga.
Yeah. And he's like trying to boss Den around, and Den's like, Den kills like all of his servants, and he's like free Catherine or I'll kill you. And he's like, oh, I'll take that. Please kill me. Yeah. So he shoots him, and he's like riddled full of holes, but they all heal instantly. And so Ard, the guy in the what'd you call it again? The sash thing.
The toga?
Toga, thank you. The guy in the toga is like so Ard is like, do this for me. Get the, what is it called again?
He wants the Lochnar.
Lochnar, yes.
He wants the Lochnar because only the possessor of the Lochnar can summon Ulutek and like gain its power.
Yes.
And he says, do this or I'll kill Catherine. And then we see Catherine encased in glass.
Sleeping Beauty-esque.
Yeah, very much so. Ard is like he's like the opponent or rival of the woman who tried to sacrifice Catherine before.
Yes.
So they're rivals. And that woman rules Neverwhere herself, but Ard wants to take over from her.
Right. And the reason she rules is because she does a sacrifice like yearly or whatever.
Yeah.
To the Ulutek.
Yeah. With the Lochnar. Yeah. So if Ard is able to do the sacrifice with the Lochnar, he can rule Neverwhere himself.
Yes.
And so Den goes with a bunch of the Beastmen to the big booped ruler's palace. They sneak inside. A bunch of them get killed by a beast.
The gore is awesome. It's like
the gore.
The red is like it's kind of beautiful.
Well, the gore in this movie is awesome. Like all throughout, even though like it's different types of animation. You know, with each segment, the gore is still great for all of them. Yeah, for sure. And they do a joke where there's a beast here with 6-inch fangs. Oh, I'm sorry, 16-inch fangs. And like immediately as he says that, there's that beast that comes out and chomps on them. So they get to the queen's bedroom,
and there is the oh my gosh, the Lochnar.
Oh, the Lochnar, yeah.
There it is, glowing in all of its glory. So Den walks in, but it's dark inside, so there's only the Lochnar.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And then...
it's dark, and then he walks through, and then he stops. You don't see anything, but like the lights come on, and you notice that he stops, and his hands are right on the queen's boobs.
He's like, oh no.
Yeah, and he's surrounded by the queen's guards. And she's like, kill him. Yeah, can we kill him? She's like, yes, kill him, castrate him. Can we do it, queen? Yes. And then they take out the knife, and she says, no, wait. Yeah. That's silly. That part is very silly. And then she's like, I may have a use for him. Bring him to my bedchambers. And the guy's like, oh no, not again.
She does this very often.
Yeah,
you can tell.
So they go to the bedroom, and like she explains something, right? Does she do any explaining?
She does some explaining. I don't remember.
Okay. If you don't remember, then it can't be important.
Or she's like your love. Oh wait, no, that's afterwards. Sorry.
Yeah. They have sex, and she's like, the rise of the moon coincides with our own climax.
And she's like, oh, your love could bring peace to the world or something like that. Just unity and stuff. And he's like, that's cool, man. Yeah. And it was at that point where the beastmen that
Den snuck into the palace with, they steal the Lochnar.
Yes.
And she's like, you betrayed me while we made love. And he makes an escape, right? And then they go back to he gets back to Ard's palace.
Yes.
And when he's there, he's trying to do the ceremony, to get the power from Ulutek.
Yes, Ard is taking Catherine and is about to sacrifice Catherine again at the wishing well, basically the magical
pool. Yeah. And then the queen comes by and she tries to stop it. Mm-hmm. And then Den comes by and he tries to stop it to save Catherine. Mm-hmm. And then the queen and Ard fight over the Lochnar. Mm-hmm. And they're like, give it to me, it's mine. No, it's mine. No, give it. No, it's mine. It's mine. That kind of funny thing. And then what kills them? Was it lightning?
Gosh, I don't know.
Oh, what happened was they were holding the scepter. They were both holding the scepter at the same time. Yeah. And because he knows about natural electricity, what he does is like he throws a chain with a spear and he throws it so that it like touches the Lochnar while the queen and Ard hold it. Mm-hmm. And then he kicks the chain into the pool where Ulutek is. Mm-hmm. And then somehow, I guess, does lightning strike the chain and like destroy the queen, Ard, and Ulutek?
I don't know if Ulutek is destroyed. Ulutek is not destroyed because Catherine is like, oh, you could rule the land with Ulutek and the Lochnar. Okay. But they are destroyed and they are taken as the sacrifice, I think. Those two. Yeah.
Okay.
But he's like, nah, I'm good. And they fly off into the sunset.
Yeah, right? I've got you to bone and that and that'll do me fine.
Yes. And again he says, on Earth I'm nobody. This is great.
Yeah.
So that was the first story.
Yeah.
The first out of many.
Well, that was the second story.
Oh, second. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, Harry Canyon we had the prologue, and then we have Harry Canyon, and then we have Den, and then we get to Captain Stern. Mm-hmm. So, like, these next few ones, let's just be honest, they're just like filler. Yeah. And they're all the length of a rock song.
Yes. Yes. I didn't really get this one. I mean, it was just like greed is bad, basically. Mm-hmm. There's like a sniveling guy who was paid off to. Yeah. So we can skip him probably.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, up to you.
Well, so what happens is it's about this guy named Captain Stern, and he's got like this big chiseled chin, and he's got this well coiffed black hair, and he's wearing like a Napoleon style like captain's uniform, and like so he's on trial for like all these horrible crimes, murder, fraud, rape, and a moving violation.
Yes.
And so he how do you plead? And he says, not guilty. Mm-hmm. And his lawyer's like, how can you do that? You should plead guilty because, these crimes are so horrible. The prosecutors got you cold. Just throw yourself at the mercy of the court. And he's like, it's okay. I've got an angle.
I've got an angle. He says that many times.
Yeah.
He's got an angle for a jaw.
Yeah. And then there's Hanover Fist.
Yes.
And he discovers the Lochnar on the space station.
Yes.
But it's like the size of a marble. Mm-hmm. And so he goes to testify in Captain Stern's favor.
Because Captain Stern had paid him off.
That's right. But then as he speaks, it's like a nervous tick where he interrupts himself in a different voice. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing.
It's like a pure rage is coming out of him, and he starts exposing the Chin Man, Lincoln Stern.
Yeah. Until and he just goes bigger, kind of like the Hulk. Mm-hmm. He doesn't turn green though. And then he just, smashes things and then chases Captain Stern out of the courtroom. And basically just makes a big distraction because it's kind of funny. It's like, just because you fuck up the courtroom, you're still wanted. Yeah.
It's true. He doesn't care. He's Captain Chin Man.
Yeah.
Lincoln Stern.
Okay. And so he chases Captain Stern and then leads him to a dead end. And then all that happens is hand over fist, like shrinks back to normal size, and Captain Stern gives him a bunch of money. But then Hanover is like, oh, thanks. And he's like, no, and Captain Stern's like, no problem. And then he opens up a escape hatch and like shoots him out into space.
Yep. It's pretty lame.
Yeah. It's not the best. It's based off of, pre-existing stories. And I'm sure that those stories are good, especially when you can read them serialized. But as a standalone, it's not that great.
Yeah. But it is a little interesting. I was curious about what was going to go on. I was a little let down by the end, but it was still interesting.
Yeah. And then we come to what's next? So
let's see. Okay, he's destroying the ship. Okay, all right, no, never mind.
The next segment is the World War II bomber segment.
Yes.
Okay.
So, man, so much has happened. Okay, sorry. There's like a bomber airplane, and they're in a dogfight, and half the crew gets killed. Almost all the crew except for the 2 pilots.
Well, the name of the ship is like something Pacific something.
Pacific Pearl.
Pacific Pearl. So this is, in the Pacific theater. So, in the Pacific Ocean, and they're doing a bombing run. And most of the horror. So, okay, we'll talk about it in full. So they do a bombing run. They're taking anti-aircraft fire. And so members of the bomber crew are getting killed by bullets. And the guy's like, just drop your payload, just do it now and let's get out of here. And he immediately gets shot up and dies. And so the captain, drops the bombs, and then they try to get out of there. And so we go back to the cabin of the bomber. And there's only the pilot and the co-pilot. And so the co-pilot goes and he looks throughout the airplane to check up on the crew.
Yes, one by one.
Yeah, and they're all dead.
They're all dead in various scary ways. It's very cool.
Yeah, for sure. And, this one, just to say now, like this one was written by Dan O'Bannon. And Dan O'Bannon, he was the screenwriter of Alien. So like, he knows about horror, basically. And so he goes throughout each position, each crew position throughout the airplane until he gets to the very back part. And then that's when he sees the Lochnar following them.
Yes.
And then the Lochnar like hits the aircraft, and that causes some, I don't know, I guess oxygen tanks. It looks kind of like oxygen tanks to fall on the co-pilot.
Yes.
And then that turns all of the dead crewmen into zombies.
Yeah. Green Lochnar zombies.
Yeah. And like, yeah, for sure. And then, he gets pulled into
the bottom gunner pit.
Yeah, the ball turret.
Yeah, the ball turret.
And it's like just this really cool scene of the ball turret.
So
and then you see like his face smash against the glass, and then like be pulled away, and then you see his feet and hands and pulled away, and then you see the splash of blood from the inside.
Yes, it's so cool.
Yeah. And then what happens is the zombies come towards the cabin where the pilot is, and he's the only one alive. Like he's like, I'm out of here. Yeah. And he just, parachutes out. And then he finds himself on a Pacific island.
Yes.
That's full of a bunch of other downed aircraft.
Yeah.
And those dead bodies become zombies too.
Yes.
And then he screams. And then we go to the next segment.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. There was like a Bermuda Triangle. It was also when the Lochnar was taking the ship. It was as if the Lochnar was steering the ship. It had like separated itself into like 3 parts. I think. Well, it was like pushing the bottom.
Well, I think what that was is there were just holes in the airplane, and like the glow was so bright that it was coming out of those places. But that did look cool. That looked very cool.
It was on the back though, on the tail fin.
But there was that hole in the tail fin.
Okay.
That where he saw the Lochnar from behind.
Okay.
So, yeah, this one is not as lame as the others because like it looks really cool. But the thing is because the stuff with the zombies and the Lochnar, that's short. That's very short. If they wanted to extend, like they could have gotten rid of the Captain Stern stuff and like did more stuff with the pilot on Zombie Island. I thought.
Yeah.
But like it's also interesting though because like without all the more stuff about the zombies and the Lochnar, it then becomes, well, what's more horrific? This fantasy zombie horror that you think, or the real horrors of war that you are watching?
Yeah.
Because, we see these pilots and aircrew getting, torn up to bits by the bullets.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I wrote, was this like survivor's guilt, like surviving the war and when all of your comrades are dead. But I think it's just a metaphor for just war in general.
Right.
There's another manifestation of evil that the Loch-Nor portrays and encourages. And so then we would transition straight from, the this island to the Pentagon, right?
Yes.
And that was a weird transition. I forget exactly how it worked, but it's all the transitions are very psychedelic and it's awesome. It's, again, the visuals of this movie are like the coolest thing ever.
Well, in this segment, you realize what some of the inspiration from this movie is. The Plutonian Nyborg.
Oh yes, so like, oh yeah, they're like crashing through, and there's
the Coke, the space Coke.
Oh yes, okay, all right.
The creators were coked up on this movie for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's John Candy.
Well, he's a robot, but it's Eugene. Well, I don't know if it's Eugene Levy, but it's Harold Ramis is one of the ones who do the Coke. So, it's the Pentagon because
this one I didn't understand how the Loch-Nor even connects. It confused me.
That's fair.
Like the Pentagon was green to begin with, and there was this scientist that was supposed to, because a bunch of people were turning into mutants, right?
Well, yeah. Oh, it must have been the Loch-Nor was turning people into mutants.
Okay,
that's what it was. Then we go to Dr. Arnak and
Antrack.
And what's that?
Artrack or something.
Okay.
Antrack or something.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. He doesn't last that long because he's like a scientist with the Department of Defense, and then he's all pale and he looks like someone from the X-Files.
Yes,
like a man in black but with very pale skin, and he just makes his way through the Pentagon. And they're asking him all these questions, like, how can all these mutants come around?
And the president is there, and he's like, we got to do something about this. My constituents are turning green. Yeah. They're growing extra arms.
Yeah, and right next to him is a stenographer, a girl, a stenographer with a huge rack.
Yes. Yes.
So the scientist tries to explain, but he can't get the words out. Something is going wrong with him. We don't understand.
Well, no, he says there's nothing wrong. There's no alien activity. This is coming from Earth itself. Okay. He's like, deny, basically. Yeah. And then he starts malfunctioning. Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's fair. And then he jumps on the table, grabs the stenographer, and then motorboats her, basically.
Yeah, it's very, very, very not cool. Very weird. Yes, he malfunctions because of how attractive she is, I guess. I don't know.
Or it could have been the influence of the Loch-Nor.
True.
But it doesn't matter.
Yes, he says something, though, that's pretty.
And then he jumps on her and motorboats her around the table. And so then we see the smiley face spaceship. Yes,
it looked like Deadmau5, the musician, the guy, DJ.
Well, do you remember the movie Pixels? With the Pac-Man, the huge Pac-Man. I think they got inspiration for that from this because there's a poster for this movie that's that shot of the smiley face spaceship over the Pentagon. And so in Pixels they have a poster of a giant Pac-Man near the Golden Gate Bridge, I think. And it makes sense that now I haven't seen that movie because there are only 4 good Adam Sandler movies, which we can get into at some other episode. But from what I understand, even though they have the giant Pac-Man and they show it in San Francisco, in the Golden Gate Bridge, it never comes up, in the movie. So I guess they're just doing that as a reference to this. And so, a giant drill, a hollow drill, burrows down through the roof of the Pentagon, sucks up the stenographer, and
the malfunctioning robot,
yeah, he's basically a malfunctioning robot.
Dr. Andrak.
Yeah, and then they both get sucked up into the spaceship, and it's such a rough ride that the robot gets all battered, and most of the clothes on the woman get tore up. And then that's when we meet the John Candy sex toy robot.
Do we have to describe this whole story? Because this is not like a short story. It's just like a weird.
Yeah,
it's like a fantasy
it's
segment.
A fever dream.
Yes, it's a fever dream. Can I just summarize it really quick?
Yes.
The John Candy sex bot and the stenographer make love. He wants to marry her. She wants a Jewish wedding.
Oh, well, the funny thing, it's not like that. What happens is like they accelerate the relationship. You know, they're like, hey, you want to go steady? Well, I have a boyfriend. Well, let's move in together. Well, I'm not sure if it'll work out between us. Well, then why don't we get married? That's literally how it goes.
Yes, and she says something weird about like.
Mixed marriages don't work.
Yes, mixed marriages don't work.
One day I could find you, I could come home and find you sleeping with the toaster.
Yes.
And, you know, she says that she'll marry him on one condition, which is a Jewish wedding.
Yeah.
And while that's going on.
Oh, yeah, she asked him if he's circumcised, too.
Oh, yeah. I forget, are you circumcised? And she was like, oh, you know, at the beginning, she's like, oh my God, that sex was incredible. But now I feel so guilty because I have a boyfriend. And he's like, well, it's perfectly natural to feel guilty when women get sexual pleasure from a mechanical thing.
Yes, assistance from like a mechanical device or something.
Yeah. So anyway, that happens. That happens.
Yeah.
And then we get to alien schmoes.
Who are piloting this mouse ship or like this massive smiley face ship.
And, you know, they basically just get bored and they're like, hey, should we pull out the plutonium Nyborg? And she says, and they go, sure. So it's, you know, they get this thing. It almost looks, you know, it's this big boxy thing and they, you know, push it like a cart. And there's like two nozzles that, you know, create this trail of huge white powder. It's a huge trail of white powder. It is space coke. It is space cocaine.
Yes.
Yes. The one guy does it, and he's like, do you think this is enough? And the other guy's like, go for broke.
Yes, go for broke.
Yeah. So, you know, they do the whole thing, and then they each take a different trail and start snorting it.
They snort it all around the trail, around their cabin.
This is when, and, you know, we start another psychedelic sequence.
Yes.
One which features the 1701D USS Enterprise.
That was kind of a nice little Easter egg.
Yeah.
And then they go to their port, their city, their floating city, and they're like, "Oh, we got to land this thing." And he's like, "Oh, I'm coked out of my mind. How am I gonna land this?" And
well, he's like, I drive better when I'm coked up. I drive better when I'm stoned because I know I'm stoned. I don't trust what I see. I just let my hands do all the flying.
Impeccable logic.
Yes, and then he continues to like crash inside the space station.
Yes, indeed.
And so that's that.
Oh man.
Yes.
And they're like, "Good landing, man."
Yeah. Any landing you can walk away from.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to the last and probably most famous sequence of the movie.
Oh, but let's go to the real quick. The intermittent segment with the girl in the farmhouse.
Okay.
She's like, the Lochnar tells her that she's basically the child who can destroy the Lochnar. I don't know why the Lochnar is telling her, but he's like, "You're the only one who can destroy me."
Like in between all these segments, like sometimes they'll go back to the girl just for a little bit to show the Lochnar terrorizing him with his voice and the green line, and then they'll, go into the next segment. And so he does that, before this last segment, telling her like, you're the only one who can destroy me, and here's the story about how that will happen.
Yes.
So what happens is we go to this kind of space fantasy world, and there's a volcano.
Well, no, the Lochnar comes down and shoots into a mountain.
Into a mountain and turns it into a volcano.
Yeah, green volcano. It's so cool.
Yeah, a volcano full of green goo.
Yes.
And so you have like all of these normal, generally good-natured people, like, wonder what's going on. And like, do they go in? I forget. Do they go into the volcano, or does the volcano like spout stuff and they get caught in its wave?
I think they get caught in its wave. But
Okay.
yeah.
And then once the green goo subsides and you see the people, like their skin has turned green, their eyes have all turned yellow.
Yeah, I don't know if they were like normal, good-natured people though, because they had like they looked like an army. Like there was a leader and you had like a medallion.
Okay.
But I mean, they might be.
Well, that's what I always got from it watching. But,
okay.
You could be right too.
So anyway, they get swamped up by this green wave. Yeah, they Locknard. Yes.
Locknard. And so they go on. They basically go on to conquer like everywhere else. And like there's this one, I guess you could say, like one last remaining fortress.
Yes.
Where there's like the wise ones,
the elders, and
the elders, and like who can save us? And I think they're like the last descendant of Tarkanian, or
oh man, it's something. It's like Ter something.
Or Tarkan's blood, something like that.
Yes.
And they're like, his line has died off, and he's like, no.
Tarna. Sorry.
Well, that's the girl, but like,
okay.
The guy who she's descended from.
My bad.
Yeah. So yeah.
Super well animated sequence.
Yeah.
The bad guys, the Lochnar army, are bursting into the inner chamber.
Yeah, and there's that kid in the pantsless pink tuxedo.
Bald-headed baby kid with a pantsless tuxedo.
Yeah, trying to like use a foot pedal to brace the door against the battering ram. He fails. He gets shot up with spears and he falls to the ground, and that's such a well animated shot.
It's so cool because like they paid so much attention to like the human body.
Yeah.
Like he's so riddled with spears, and he's like breathing raggedly, and you can see his like abdomen move up and down rapidly. It's like, it's so cool.
Yeah, that one shot.
Yes.
That one shot. And then they go on to slaughter the elders. But then,
can I take a real quick detour? So back whenever they were getting lavaed or whatever by the Lochnar, when they were getting Locknard by the wave of green, the guy with the medallion held it up, and like his arm was the only thing out of like the lava, and it looked just like Gollum in Lord of the Rings whenever he's like dying. And I was like, I wonder if they took inspiration from that.
Well, that's kind of interesting because do you know about the animated Lord of the Rings movies?
I watched them when I was young. They were like Ralph Bakshi or whatever.
Yeah, Ralph Bakshi, and he rotoscoped them. Well, a lot of that was rotoscope, but that's a whole interesting thing in and of itself. But yeah,
sorry, I just wanted to bring that up. And also, he has like a mechanical hand.
Yeah.
Anyways, cut back to. Then
we get introduced to Tarna.
Yes,
and a beautiful, it's a beautiful sequence. It's beautifully composed, like the song. It's really great. It's a really great sequence where you see this woman. She's wearing robes and she's on a hairless pterodactyl steed flying through the sky. And then she comes to the temple. She sees the dead bodies of the elders. And then she goes to another chamber. I think she bathes herself. Like, did she go into water?
Yes.
Yeah. She goes into like this pool and then comes out. And then she comes across, I guess you could call it a warrior's garb.
Yes. Well, first she flies the pterodactyl for like 10 straight minutes.
Okay, yeah.
Through across the desert wasteland and stuff. Also, apparently she's got the defender's blood in it that cannot refuse the call of like the helpless or whatever.
Right.
Okay, sorry. Then she drives the pterodactyl for 10 straight minutes, winds up in this place, and yes, warrior's garb.
Which composed of very long gloves, very high boots, a little bra for her massive bosom, and a string to tie it all together.
Yes, it's very like, I don't know. It's very like almost... Yeah, it's very like, I mean, her putting on her clothes is very like, it's like an erotic sequence.
Yeah. I mean, it's, well, I mean, I don't know if I would call it erotic. It's very slow, and for that sequence, they rotoscoped it with a model. So they filmed the model doing that action on film, and then they they drew the animation frames over the live action frames, so it looks like you get very realistic motion from that. And I mean, yeah, she gets nude basically, and then puts on all of her clothes.
I guess it's more sensuous, maybe.
Yeah, that's a better example, because like she's definitely made for the male gaze.
Yes,
but it's not really a sequence that I think somebody would jerk off to.
Yes.
So
she's not as like sexualized. She's like gorgeous or whatever, and with like big boobs and all that stuff, but she's not a sexual person, like being.
It's more the European sense of nudity rather than the American sense of nudity, if that makes any sense.
Yes, so it's more like she's a symbol of something,
an archetype,
pure.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So she puts on her super clothes and she also gets the sword, right?
Yeah, she gets the sword.
She like raises it, and this like lightning comes down, and also that she's surrounded by these like huge statues. The statues reminded me of Blade Runner 2049.
Oh.
Because they're like, various women in like crouching positions. And anyways, she's got the lightning on her sword. It's very cool sequence.
Yeah, that part was in the trailer and in the commercials. So yeah. And
then she flies the pterodactyl some more.
Yeah. She goes to a place and she tries to track down the leader of the Locknard army, basically. She goes to like a bar or something, beats some of them up, shows the symbol to the barkeep, and he's like, yeah, go to the mountain with the green glow.
Well, yeah, there's a bunch of predatory men. It's like an old-fashioned saloon.
Yeah.
It's very cool. It's like Wild West. She decapitates all of them. She doesn't beat them up. She decapitates them all.
Okay, that's fair.
Green blood. It's so cool. It's so cool.
Right. And so she goes to that place. She goes to the mountain with the green glow, and she. So what happens?
The net. They capture her pterodactyl in a net and her.
Yeah, they capture her. Yeah, they capture her, and then the leader with the mechanical arm. He's like, yeah, get her cleaned up and then bring her to me. And so like you see this establishing shot in his fortress or something. And then he walks toward basically kind of like a slab with like electronic buttons and lights on it. And then, he approaches it, and then you see the close up of what's on the other side of the slab, and it's Tarna naked being bound down, bound to it upright. And,
one thing can I jump in with is that as she's flying to this place, there's like a narration that's like, when life loses its value and is taken for naught, you must like avenge, basically.
Yeah.
So that's her mission now, because that whole city is wiped out. So now her mission is to avenge.
She was not able to defend, as was the pact that she could not refuse, which means that she now has to avenge. So gives it like a real mythic, heroic mythic fantasy vibe to the segment.
So she's all tied up, or she's like strapped in to this upright bed, and the medallion guy is what I called him.
Yeah.
He like takes out like 5 whips in one hand and starts like beating her up, I guess. It doesn't show any of that.
Yeah. He's just like, hand me my whips. And so they give him like a whole bunch of whips. And then like just as he's about to like lash at her, it cuts to black. And then we get a fade in of like this pit with like a bunch of ledges. And we see Tarna naked with all the bloody cuts all over her body.
Yeah.
And then they throw down her clothes, and then they throw some other schmo down in the pit, all the way down. They don't bother to throw them on a ledge.
No.
And we also see the pterodactyl bird. It's being handled by the rough guys.
So they're supposed to kill it.
Yeah, they're supposed to kill it. They're trying to kill it, but it's fighting back. And so what happens is Tarna starts to put on her clothes, but while the bird, what they do is they try to shoot the bird with a spear gun, but it's able to rear back, and then it pulls one of the bad guys, and he gets speared instead. And so then it's able to escape.
This pterodactyl is the most badass sidekick pet ever.
Yes, absolutely. That is absolutely true. And then it flies out in the pit, picks up Tarna, and they fly off, but not before, and they try to get away, but then unfortunately, pterodactyl bird gets speared.
Yes, in the neck.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So they crash and burn into like a canyon, and Medallion Man catches up with them. And then we have the big showdown, right? Between, what is her name again? Tarna and Medallion Man. I don't know his name. But he pulls out his hand, it's a mechanical hand, and like whips out like this like roto saw thing. It's really cool. It's like whirring. And so she's got her sword, and they do this crazy sword fight. It's very slow animation, which is weird. It's almost like in slow motion, but it's very like, they are very careful about the body movements and how like to try and make it accurate. But it's also weird how slow everyone moves in this fight sequence.
Well, back then, like, that's how some fight sequences were. Like, so I'm kind of a fan of old-fashioned martial arts movies. Like, I'm not super into the genre, but I'm kind of into the genre. And one of the things that you will notice is that the movements for their fight coordination is very slow, but, it's meant to be seen.
I see.
They want, that's what I think. I think that they want the audience to follow the action of the fight very simply and clearly. But the one who changed that was Bruce Lee. Before Bruce Lee, martial arts fights, they were very well coordinated, but Bruce Lee wanted more realistic fights, and so they called him like Three Kick Bruce because all of his fight scenes, it was just 3 kicks and then that's it. And it's also a lot different than the shaky cam fight scenes that we get nowadays.
Yes.
So that's kind of the reason why this movie is really a throwback to that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
but it is a cool sequence. She gets cut a lot with this saw, and her sword isn't really doing her much good. It gets thrown away from her, and she's about to basically die when good old-fashioned pterodactyl comes in again and grabs Medallion Man's leg, crushing it
with its beak.
It's so
it's badass, and like dragging the guy like away from Tarna while it has 3 spears inside it. It's great. And then the amulet guy, the medallion guy, like he gets up, like his ankle's fucking crushed, so like he can barely stand.
Leg is like mush.
And so like it brings its hand up to like strike at the thing. And like this movie's so smart. It doesn't, like, this is the one gore that it doesn't show. It's like, you can show all kinds of people getting killed. You can show old men getting killed. You can show like young women getting killed. You can show babies getting killed. You can't show animals getting killed.
It's true.
It's true.
It's true.
It's true. And so that was smart. That was very smart. Yeah. And so the pterodactyl bird dies. But doesn't Tarna like go get the sword?
Yeah, that leaves enough time for Tarna.
Oh no, the pterodactyl bird doesn't die.
Yeah,
it gets like really hurt. It gets really hurt. Well, we don't see anything. We just hear the.
Oh yeah. Also, they're like human screams.
Yeah,
this pterodactyl sounds like human screams. It's very unnerving.
Yeah.
So that leaves her enough time to get the sword, right? And then I forget how she kills him, but I'm assuming she kills Medallion Man. Yeah. In a cool way. Yeah. With the golden sword. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. Let's see. Do I have it written down?
Well, what happens next is she pulls off, like, she's wounded. The pterodactyl bird is wounded. She barely pulls the saddle off to get the weight off of it so that it's able to fly and like take her over the green glowing volcano, over the Lochnar. Yeah. And the Lochnar is saying, "No, don't do this. You don't have to sacrifice yourself." And then like she hovers over it and like she brings up her sword and does lightning strike again?
I think she dives in, doesn't she?
I don't think she dives in. I think like light emanates from her.
Oh, okay, yeah.
and then like it displaces the Lochnar. And so that with that light, she's like sacrificing herself, and then the story comes full circle.
Full circle.
And then we go back to the house where the Lochnar, like, it's starting to break up and being destroyed by Tarna, even though at the same time it's back at the house, and it's happening simultaneously.
Yes, with the girl in the farmhouse.
Yeah. And so she's able to run away from the house, and then we see like first the spirit of the pterodactyl bird, and then it materializes, and then the little girl gets on top of the bird, the pterodactyl, and it flies away. But then the Lochnar explodes inside the house. And like it's a really cool shot because like the house is animated, but the actual explosion is like from a miniature model house.
Yes.
Yeah, so it goes from animation to live action, and it's very cool.
I think there's a lot of that in this. There's like some backgrounds that are like actually like liquid. They look like liquid.
Yeah, I know the ones that you're talking about.
Yeah, but they blow up the house and she gets away.
But then you talk. But then as she flies away, her hair turns white, like Tarna's is, and she gets like that red dagger mark on her body.
Tattoo, which we forgot to tell about.
Yeah.
Tarna had a neck tattoo the entire time, which was a mark that
of the descendants that she was a part of. Yeah, the bloodline that she was a part of. So the little girl is now a part of that bloodline, and the Lochnar was destroyed for another generation.
Yes,
and that's heavy metal.
Yeah. Wild ride.
Yes. Yes, a very wild ride. So this was my pick. And the reason why it was my pick is because if you're going to do mostly art and indie movies, and I'm going to mostly do genre movies, well, this movie it's the most genre movie that I can think of.
Yeah.
It's nothing but tropes.
Yeah.
And I think it does it very well.
Yeah.
And, there's kind of a funny history with this because, this movie was released theatrically in 1981, but it didn't get to home video until like 1993, I think, like the early 90s. Yeah. And the reason why was because the production company, they only had the theatrical rights to all of the rock songs.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's like, these are all like great songs made at the time.
Yeah.
And then, in the 80s, go ahead.
Everyone's on that soundtrack. You got like Sammy Hagar.
Rockers, rockers.
Yeah, all the rockers. Yeah. You got even like Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
Like Devo. Yeah. Devo has like an appearance as like a sci-fi band in a bar. It's cool.
Yeah. Entire segment.
Yeah. And you got Cheap Trick, like everybody. Ozzy Osbourne. No, Black Sabbath. Sabbath still.
Yeah. Nazareth. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can understand why they didn't get the rights for a while. Yeah.
and so it's kind of funny because it didn't get released until like the early 90s. And in the early 90s, like that's when there was so what I kind of want to connect heavy metal to is like anime. Because, should I get into this whole spiel about Japanese film in regards to America? Well, sure. The thing that I kind of want to talk about with that is that America has a hegemony globally in regards to entertainment. The film industry of every other country on earth is overshadowed by Hollywood, right? Historically. Yeah, essentially. But the thing is like, well, what do Americans watch when they don't want to watch American movies? They watch Japanese stuff. And that comes from, following World War II. The United States occupied Japan, following World War II. And while the occupation, that ended, we still have military bases there. And so, they say that there's a special relationship between Great Britain and America, the United States, because, we culturally come from Great Britain, so there's that special relationship that's talked about in geopolitics. Well, there's also a special relationship between the United States and Japan, because the United States is not only is it an Atlantic nation, it's also a Pacific nation. And so that relationship developed following World War II, when we occupied it after the war. And then we maintain military bases so that we can maintain our national interests in the Pacific theater,
Mm-hmm.
and throughout Asia. And so
You can see that like sort of give and take, just like with Akira Kurosawa and the westerns, like they borrow so much from each other. Like, well, mainly the westerns are stealing from Akira Kurosawa at that time, but he was inspired by westerns too, I believe. Yeah, I mean, it's just so much interchanging and sharing.
Absolutely.
Or stealing, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. And, then, there's also the kaiju films like, Godzilla, that was big here in America, starting back in the 50s, going on through the 60s. And then you have anime, Japanese animation, which came over like way back in the 50s with like, Gigantor and Astro Boy and, just going on and on. So what happens is like each decade, there's kind of a wave of anime that gets introduced here in the United States. In the 80s, that was mostly things like Voltron and Robotech and, a few other shows. But then in the 90s, there was a 90s wave. And what happened with that was there was this company I think called Madman Entertainment. He was one of them, but I think there were several companies. And what they would basically do is they would buy the license to sell Japanese animation here in the United States.
Okay.
And like, I don't know what happened at that time. I don't know what happened at that time, but they wanted to show so the 90s is a very edgy time. It's a very extremely edgy time, as well as the anime. So like Madman Entertainment and the other anime distribution companies like it, they really wanted to stress like, oh, this isn't the animation for your parents. So like there was a lot of violence, a lot of nudity, a lot of sex in a lot of those anime that came over in the 90s from Japan to the US. And so it's kind of really interesting that heavy metal, which is full of sex and violence, but it's from Canada, also made its re-release at the same time. Yeah.
So it's almost like a perfect timing.
Yeah. Like even though it's not Japanese, there's still a lot of that energy.
Yeah.
So yeah. So it came out at a really good time then. And also like during the 90s, that's when there was a big comic book shop boom going on. And heavy metal, it's based off of a French magazine that would serialize French and European adult comic book stories. And so instead of like
usually science fiction, right?
Science fiction, fantasy,
Okay,
yeah. So yeah, and so like those would get sold into comic book shops. And so, just by, comic book shops, that was really the hub of where all of this kind of, counterculture, there was a lot of counterculture media being, put out there. And, you can go into a comic book shop, get comics, but also get manga and then get the anime and then get, heavy metal.
Yeah.
So because of that, a specific type of person is the one most likely, to pick up on all this stuff, that kind of that counterculture of the time. So yeah.
A sort of perfect timing.
Yeah, for sure, for its re-release.
Yeah.
And like another kind of thing that I wanted to talk about now kind of goes with we don't see sex and nudity a lot in our movies anymore. And the reason why is basically because of internet porn. Before internet porn, movies sometimes had to show some skin in order to get people to watch it. Like that was what people thought at the time, to titillate audiences with sex in order to get them to watch it. And in fact, some movies, they would also film two different versions of a movie, the American version and the European version. The European version would show a lot more nudity simply because they had more relaxed social mores for nudity.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, because, prior to the 80s, the only way that you could see porn basically was if you went to an adult theater. you had to go to a movie theater to watch porn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what New York was all about,
Right. In the first
why it was so grimy.
segment.
Yeah. And that all changed with the advent of VHS, where instead of going to theaters, you could just buy a video cassette and get your porn. And that kind of transition, that's what Boogie Nights is basically about. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you had porn being done through VHS, but you also had what's called softcore porn, which is where you show nudity and depictions of sex, but you don't show insertion. And that was the big draw for cable, like HBO, Showtime, Cinemax, which used to be called Skinemax.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. They would have their daytime programming, and then, late at night, when the kids were supposed to be asleep, they would have their soft core. They'd show their soft core movies. Yeah, that was a whole industry. And that, it seems to me that, that went away with internet porn, when everybody can just get porn, whenever they want. If it's sexual gratification through a medium, they'll just do that. They don't need the pretense of, they don't need the pretense of a movie.
Right.
In order to get that sexual satisfaction. And I mean, so the reason why I'm talking about this is not just because I'm a pervert. It's not. I swear to God. The reason why I bring this up is because
it changed movies.
Yes, exactly. It really changed movies. Because if you go back and you watch Halloween, that shows, breasts. And the reason why was because it was a cheap horror movie, meant for drive-in theaters. And to get the kids to watch it, you had to show skin. And, there, like I said, there was a whole industry of low-budget softcore porn. And that's gone. Movies, cinema has totally divided. So, we no longer need to have sex in our movies. And so, that's like another reason why I kind of wanted to show this movie was, how, this one is kind of extreme, but yeah, we don't show sex in movies anymore. And, that's the reason why. So
it is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget what I was going to say, honestly.
That's fine.
But yes, it has. I can see you brought that up to me before, and I can see how it has changed movies in general. And now it's not, sex scenes are not really for titillation very much. They're just they're for character, or romantic, I guess, or there's more fantasy, I guess. I don't know. It's not as much just to turn people on and get people to come. People don't come to the theaters just to watch these scenes or because they have these things in them. They watch it for the movie, like you were saying.
Right. So if it's in a movie, chances are there's probably a really good reason why. I was told about this one South Korean movie. I can't remember the name of it. Basically, it was about these two young men and a woman. And then there's a scene where the young Korean woman, they're outside, and she just takes her clothes off and gets naked and walks around. And it's not for titillation at all. You can tell just by the cinematography and by the performance of the actress that her being nude in public at that moment means something. Like I said, it changed cinema.
Yeah.
It really changed low art, but also high art too, to where we don't need sex scenes shoved in anymore. So,
but now that means that high art doesn't have to stay away from it because it's hush hush, because it's low. Yeah, they can include it now that it's story.
Yeah, as long as they make sure it's story.
Yeah,
so
interesting.
So yeah,
I mean, I thought the themes of this movie were interesting. They felt a little superficial.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah.
Because this movie is basically just an exhibition of amazing artwork. As far as the animation is amazing. The style of this movie.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the major influence on the style, Mobius?
Oh, we talked about him in the beginning a little bit.
Do you want to talk more about it?
I don't know much about Mobius. Okay. I just know he was a big contributor to the early stages of Heavy Metal Magazine. and I like the look of his art. It's very, very interesting. I was just gonna say one thing about I like the detail that the girl the whole time, her necklace has like a heart on it. I was like, that's kind of cool. Like she's the one who defeats the evil, the greed, and the hatred is love. And I was like, that's a nice little nugget to take away from this. But
well, yeah, there is a lot of superficiality in this movie. Like they're not trying too hard.
No, they are.
You know, with connecting it all, and that's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay. It's still a good watch.
If you did watch this movie on drugs, you would never not watch this movie on drugs.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, it makes me feel like I'm on drugs. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, again, like the 2001 Space Odyssey sequences of just like trippiness, the psychedelicness. It's so cool. It's so fun.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you enjoyed the movie?
I enjoyed the movie. I wanted something a little deeper. Didn't get that.
Right.
But it was a fun trip.
Okay.
And visually it was awesome.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. And the soundtrack.
Soundtrack was great. And there were some really funny parts too.
Yes. She had beautiful eyes. That's what he was looking at.
Definitely. What was your favorite segment out of all of them?
My favorite segment? I would, Den. Den is my favorite segment for sure. Yeah. Because like it's the funniest. I mean, Harry Canyon is funny, but like it's a very mean. It's a very mean segment. In Tarna, that doesn't have any humor at all.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
But it is very earnest. It is very earnest, yes, which is nice.
That's the most earnest one.
Yeah, but it doesn't have humor. And I love how Den is more tongue in cheek, and the John Candy narration alone is great. Yeah, I love John Candy. This movie came out, when I was a teen. So yeah.
Did you see it in theater?
No. It only had a theatrical release in like 1981. Okay. It might have had a re-release since then, but I haven't seen it in the theaters.
Okay.
I first got this on videotape, and then DVD, and then Blu-ray, and then stream, because I love this movie. I really do. So
it's a good time.
Absolutely. Well, especially if you watch it alone.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
And with that, let's leave our audience alone. I think that's a good segue.
Yeah.
So, and we'll I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and that you guys come back for more.
Indeed. Yeah. Are we staggering them consistently so they're like art and then genre movies?
Yeah.
Okay. It's cool. I guess so the next one will probably be some sort of art movie.
Whatever art movie or indie movie or whatever, any kind of movie. Like, you're not limited to art or indie. You can choose whatever movie you want.
See you guys next time, in other words.
We'll see you guys next time. All right. Take care, guys.
Bye.